The sound came first, not the crash, but the scream. Because $5 billion doesn't fall quietly. It shatters like a wine glass held too close to a speaker. High-pitched, furious, the kind of frequency that makes your teeth ache. It was early morning when the tech metropolis woke up to the sound of glass shattering. They watched as the Zenith, a 127-story tower of architectural ambition, was tearing itself apart. From the street, it looked like rain, beautiful almost. Thousands of glass shards catching the morning sun as they fell, spinning, glittering like diamonds in freefall, until the first piece hit the pavement. Then another, then a cascade that sent people scattering, screaming, diving headfirst under awnings. The building wasn't collapsing, it was shedding. It was losing its skin like a snake, except this skin cost $18,000 per square meter. "Get everyone inside now," the security chief shouted into his radio, his voice carrying that sharp edge that comes when training meets chaos, and realizes the training was inadequate. Quick question, in any critical moment, would you trust a complex algorithm or your own gut feeling? If this story has you hooked, hit that like and subscribe right now. Drop your vote in the comments, but don't decide until you see how this plays out. 90 floors above the carnage, in a boardroom that cost more than most people's homes, 18 executives sat frozen. Not because they were calm, but because real terror makes you still. The conference table was Brazilian rosewood, the chairs were Italian leather, yet the view which was supposed to be the best in the district now showed their investment dying in real time. "How much?" The voice cut through the silence like a blade. It belonged to Elias Thorne, a man in his early 50s with silver hair and a bespoke suit, possessing the kind of face that had never heard the word no. A founder, a visionary, the man who had promised investors an 18% annual return on the most advanced smart building ever constructed. "How much are we losing?" he asked again, the subtle yet calm anger evident in his voice. The chief financial officer didn't want to answer, his tablet screen showed numbers that made his stomach turn. 2.3 million. Daily, the officer whispered, letting the silence fill the room. "That is our burn rate if we suspend operations. Insurance won't cover this due to the design defect clause, meaning we are completely exposed." Someone laughed, not out of humor but hysteria, the kind of sound people make when the universe reveals itself to be crueler than they imagined. Elias stood at the window with his hands clasped behind his back, watching glass panels fall like tears. "What's the timeline?" he asked. A woman spoke up with calm precision, the kind that comes from 17 years of never being wrong. Dr. Sarah Voss, the chief engineer. "It will take 3 months to identify the root cause, 6 to design a fix, and 12 to implement. This is the best-case scenario." "We don't have 12 months, Elias said without turning around. "I know," Sarah replied softly. "We don't have 3, Elias snapped, finally turning from the window to face them. "The building authority gives us 96 hours to prove structural integrity. After that, they condemn it. $5 billion becomes a tax write-off, a permanent monument to my failure." The room absorbed this heavy truth. Venture capital has a concept called terminal velocity, the point where losses accelerate beyond recovery. The zenith had just reached it. Dr. Sarah Voss pulled up thermal imaging on the main screen, angry red patches spreading across the tower's facade like a virus. The building's analysis shows microfracturing across 47% of the curtain wall system, she explained, looking at the data. "The structural integrity is compromised." In English, Sarah. "The building is falling apart, and we don't know why." Elias's reflection in the window showed something no one in that room had seen before. Uncertainty. For 30 years he had built an empire on the simple belief that technology could make cities not just smarter, but more profitable. But the thing about betting everything on artificial intelligence, on algorithms that promise to optimize every beam, is that when the machine is wrong, it is catastrophically wrong. "The AI passed every simulation, every stress test," Sarah said, her voice hollow. 3 Nobel Prize-winning engineers signed off on this design, yet 7 weeks after opening it is shedding glass like a dying animal sheds fur. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full of the sound of careers ending. Of reputations dissolving. Get me everyone. Every structural firm on the continent. I don't care what it costs. Elias's eyes narrowed as he spoke. Find me an answer. Because in 96 hours this building either stands, or it becomes the most expensive failure in architectural history. 400 feet below that boardroom, someone who had never set foot in an Ivy League classroom was parking a beat-up Honda scooter. Leo removed his helmet, revealing the face of a 19-year-old architecture student with dark skin and eyes that catalogued everything without seeming to look at anything. The delivery bag slung over his shoulder was older than his relationship with optimism. And earning $22 an hour was what genius paid when genius didn't have the right credentials. He was a first-generation immigrant studying structural systems by day at the local college. The school where you go when your family can't afford the prestigious programs. By night he delivered food to people who would never remember his face. With student debt climbing toward $60,000. His likelihood of landing an internship at a firm like Reed Global was statistically indistinguishable from zero. But Leo had something those Harvard graduates didn't. He possessed a pattern recognition ability that bordered on the supernatural. Give him a floor plan, he saw load distribution. Show him a facade, he calculated wind loads in his head. His professors called it spatial hyperintelligence. His classmates called it showing off. But nevertheless, Leo simply called it seeing what is actually there. As he approached the service entrance, he saw construction barriers everywhere. The building looming above like a glass god that had just discovered mortality. I'm here for a delivery at the executive suite, 51st floor, he told the guard. Service elevator is down, use the main lobby and transfer at 25. Leo nodded and entered. Marking the moment where luck intervened. The lobby was architectural pornography. 40-foot ceilings, walls of Italian marble. Covering one entire wall were the architectural plans of the Zenith itself. Displayed as art behind museum-quality glass. Most people would walk past. Leo stopped. His delivery bag sliding from his shoulder to the floor. While the human brain processes patterns at roughly 300 bits per second, Leo's processed at 10 times that rate. His brain was screaming at him. He looked at the blueprint, thousands of lines that were meaningless to the untrained eye. Leo's eyes were tracking across the curtain wall attachment system on the upper floors, and immediately, he was seeing that something was catastrophically wrong. The building's aspect ratio, the cross-sectional change at floor 73, he pulled out his phone. His thumbs flew across the screen, numbers cascading. The vortex shedding frequency was matching the building's natural frequency. A standing wave, an aeroelastic flutter. His heart began pounding. Not from fear, but from certainty. The kind that comes when the universe reveals a pattern so obvious you can't believe no one else has seen it. Who is the structural engineer of record? He asked out loud. A security supervisor named Davis approached him, looking suspicious. Are you lost, boy? Your building, Leo said, pointing at the wall. The attachment system for the curtain wall is experiencing harmonic resonance. Davis stared at him blankly. The glass isn't failing because of a material defect, Leo continued, his intensity rising. It's failing because the wind is making your building sing itself to death. Sir. I'm going to need you to leave, replied the security supervisor. I need to speak to whoever is in charge right now. Leo's voice changed. No longer the polite delivery driver, but someone who had seen the future. Your building has maybe 3 days before the next major weather system hits. And when that wind hits the right velocity, you aren't losing panels. You are losing everything. Davis hovered his hand over his radio. He faced a choice, see a delivery driver making wild claims, or see someone who had just calculated in 30 seconds what supercomputers had missed. Finally, he pressed the button. We have a situation in the main lobby. I'm bringing someone up. As they walked toward the executive elevators, Leo wasn't thinking about protocol. He was thinking about how wind creates vortices around tall structures, and how resonance kills. The executive elevator was brushed steel and ambient lighting, dead silent except for the hum of ascension. Floor numbers ticked upward, 30, 40, 50. Leo's mind raced faster than the elevator. He had checked the weather forecast that morning, a low-pressure system bringing winds of 50 miles per hour in 72 hours. The doors opened on floor 50, a security checkpoint that looked like a spy thriller, filled with biometric scanners and guards in tailored suits. "Credentials," the first guard demanded. "He is with me for an emergency consultation," Davis said, his voice steady despite the uncertainty underneath. "No one briefed me on any consultation, and he is not on the approved contractor list." Leo scanned the security setup, his mind calculating. "Your building is experiencing aeroelastic flutter, and critical wind velocity will be reached in 72 hours. The failure pattern isn't random, it's systematic." The guards exchanged glances. This certainly was not typical delivery driver vocabulary. The Tacoma Narrows Bridge, the John Hancock Tower, it's the same fundamental physics, only on different scales. If I am wrong, you waste 5 minutes. But if I am right and you stop me, the result is catastrophic. The guard spoke into his radio, a tense pause filled with static noises, then the order came through. "Scan him. Bring him to the war room." They moved through a corridor of impossible luxury where everything whispered that he didn't belong. But Leo was focused on the fact that in 72 hours, the structure would experience full collapse. The double doors frosted with "Strategic Command" slid open. The war room contained 18 people inside, executives in expensive suits, engineers with PhDs, all centered around Elias Thorne. Elias ended his call and looked at Leo. "Who is this?" he asked. Davis replied, trying against all odds not to sound stupid. "Sir, he was examining the architectural display in the lobby. He identified the structural failure mechanism." Dr. Sarah Voss laughed, a single incredulous bark. "You are joking," she retorted. "I don't pay people to joke during a crisis." Elias silenced the room, looking Leo directly in the eye. "You have 60 seconds, make them count." Leo stepped forward. No hint of nervousness in his charisma. He simply moved like he belonged. "Your building is failing because of aeroelastic flutter caused by vortex-induced vibration. The AI you applied modeled for static wind loads, but it didn't account for harmonic resonance." Several engineers leaned forward and obviously surprised by the boy's articulation. The building's aspect ratio creates a vortex generation point. When wind hits 45 miles per hour, it creates a standing wave. The curtain wall attachments aren't failing structurally. They are failing because they are being asked to resist a force that is oscillating at the building's resonant frequency. "That is impossible," Dr. Sarah said. "We ran every dynamic analysis, every wind tunnel test." "Did your wind tunnel model account for the surrounding buildings, wake effects at full scale as well?" Leo asked into the silence. "Because your simulation was clean field. But in this urban canyon, adjacent towers create a Venturi effect that accelerates wind speed by 18%. Leo moved to the conference table. He picked up a coffee cup without asking permission, filling it halfway with water. "This is your building," he started while signaling to the cup. Then he began tapping the rim of the cup, a steady rhythm. The water began to slosh. "This is wind hitting the facade at the wrong frequency. Do you notice how the water moves?" He adjusted his tapping rhythm, and the water's movement amplified dramatically, splashing up the sides. "This is resonance. A small force, becoming catastrophic at the right frequency." He set the cup down as water sloshed over the rim. "Your building is that cup and the wind is my finger. In 72 hours, the wind is going to hit the exact frequency that makes your $5 billion investment tear itself apart." Elias stared at the cup. Then at Sarah. "Sarah?" he beckoned. She was already pulling up files on her tablet, her face pale. "The wind tunnel testing used a scaled model, we didn't account for the surrounding buildings." She looked up, horrified. "Oh my God, he is right." The room erupted. Executives shouting, engineers scrambling. But Leo just stood there, the invisible guest who had seen what 50 PhDs couldn't. Elias walked slowly toward him. "What is your name, son?" "Leo." "Leo, You just walked into a room of the most expensive minds in engineering and told us we missed something fundamental. I didn't tell you, Leo said, meeting his gaze. The physics told you. I am just the one who was willing to look. Elias extended his hand, his smile, a mix of admiration settling in firmness. Welcome to Reed Global. Your consulting rate just became considerably more than $22 an hour. If he is right, Sarah interrupted, her voice trembling, and the storm hits in 72 hours, we don't have time to fix this. Then we make time. Elias's voice was steel. Because the alternative is watching this building come down on live television. And I don't lose. Not like this. Not ever. He turned back to Leo and spoke gently. You saw the problem. Now help us solve it. Because in 72 hours we either prove you wrong, or we prove you are the smartest person who ever walked through that door. Leo looked at the countdown everyone could feel ticking in their chest. It'll take only 3 days to save a building that took 8 years to build. I will need access to your full structural specifications, Leo said, already calculating. Your wind study data, and a whiteboard. Elias smiled. The smile of a man who had just bet everything on a delivery driver. Get him whatever he needs. And someone get this kid a better shirt. He is about to save a $5 billion building, he should at least look the part. But Leo was already moving toward the LED wall. Already calculating. Already seeing patterns in the chaos that others would take days to find. Because this is what genius looks like. Not polished. Not credentialed. Not apologetic. Just absolutely, undeniably right. And in 72 hours, the world would know it. The whiteboard was clean, waiting. Leo picked up a marker. A cheap piece of plastic that felt lighter than a wrench but held more weight than a sledgehammer. Behind him, 18 of the world's most expensive engineers were watching, waiting for him to fail. The wind isn't just pushing the building, Leo said, drawing a jagged line. It's shaking it. It has a rhythm. This is ridiculous, a senior consultant named Sterling muttered. This is a man who had designed airports in Dubai and bridges in Tokyo. Elias, you cannot seriously be letting a delivery boy dictate the safety of a $5 billion asset. He shouted, his voice carrying the tint of an ego bruise. One that came from not being able to contribute any solutions despite his expertise. Elias Thorne didn't look at Sterling. He was staring at the board. The delivery boy is the only one who saw the problem, Sterling. Unless you have a better idea. I suggest you take notes. The room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Sterling flushed, adjusting his bespoke tie. The vibration is theoretical. We can install giant counterweights on the roof. We fly them in by helicopter, and bolt them to the frame to stop the swaying. Too heavy, Leo said without turning around. The roof is already holding maximum weight. You add 50 tons of steel up there, you don't stop the swaying, you snap the columns. Then we brace the core, Sterling argued, his voice rising. We shall weld steel supports across the atrium. Takes 3 weeks, Leo shot back. We have 71 hours. He turned to face them. You are thinking like civil engineers. You are trying to fight the wind. But you can't fight it, not with a building this big. You have to confuse it. Leo drew a rough sketch of the tower on the board. Right now, the wind hits the flat face, and it organizes. It pushes left, then right, then left. That rhythm is what's killing us. If we can break the rhythm, we kill the danger. Dr. Sarah Voss looked up from her tablet. Her eyes weren't hostile anymore, they were calculating. He's talking about aerodynamics, she whispered. If we change the shape of the building, the wind can't lock on. Exactly, Leo nodded. We don't need to make the building stronger. We need to make it invisible to the wind. Night fell over the city. But inside the zenith, time had stopped. The war room was a mess of coffee cups and crumbled paper. The smell of panic masked by expensive cologne. Elias Thorne was on the phone with the mayor. Calling in favors that would cost him political capital he had spent decades accumulating. I don't care about the noise complaints, Mr. Mayor. I need the streets cleared for 6 blocks. Yes. I'll pay the fines. Just clear the zone. He hung up, looking at his reflection in the dark glass. If this building comes down, he said quietly to Leo, it's not just money. It's my name. My father built cheap housing. I built the future. If the zenith falls, I become a joke. Leo paused his calculations. For the first time, he saw the fear behind the billionaire's mask. It wasn't about going broke. It was about being erased. It won't fall, Leo said. How can you be sure? Elias asked. You're 19. You've never built anything real. I haven't, Leo admitted. But I know why your AI missed this. He walked over to the laptop running the simulation. I checked the memory of your building's AI. It was trained on weather patterns from the last 50 years. Standard procedure, Sarah Voss said. Standard, and fatal, Leo corrected. The climate has changed. The once-in-a-century storm isn't happening every 100 years anymore. It's happening every 5. Your AI built a perfect ship, for an ocean that doesn't exist anymore. The room went silent. The irony hung in the air like smoke. They had used the smartest computer on Earth, to build a trap for themselves. It wasn't a glitch, Leo said softly. It was a blind spot. The AI assumed the past equals the future. It doesn't. Elias looked at the server rack blinking in the corner. We built a god, and forgot to teach it about rain, he said, a tone of shame subtly noticeable in his voice. 70 hours, Sarah announced. The storm just sped up. Winds are hitting 40 miles per hour at the coast. The simulation on the screen turned red. The virtual building twisted, and shattered. We need a solution, Elias said, his voice flat. Leo was staring at the blueprint on the wall, specifically at the empty levels. His eyes panned to the mechanical floors designed for air conditioning and machinery. Floors 40, 70, and 100. Open them, Leo said confidently yet calmly. The mechanical floors, Leo pointed. They are wrapped in glass. If we blow out the glass, if we open those floors completely, the wind can pass right through. He grabbed the marker again, drawing arrows through the building. The wind hits the tower, but instead of pushing against it, some of it passes through the building. It breaks the rhythm. Sterling laughed, a harsh, barking sound. That's your solution. We intentionally break the building. We break the skin to save the skeleton, Leo said intensely. We remove the glass on the empty levels. It reduces the wind force by 20%. It stops the shaking. Sarah Voss was running the numbers. Her fingers flew across the keyboard. He's right. If the wind can pass through, it can't push back and forth. But those windows are reinforced, Sterling argued. You can't just open them, you'd need to physically remove them. How long to remove them? Elias asked, his voice subtle. With a crew? 2 weeks, we will need cranes, suction cups, safety harnesses. Leo stepped back, looking at the diagram. His eyes seemed to connect more details no one else could observe. We really don't need cranes. We need sledgehammers, Leo said. And we need people crazy enough to stand on the edge of a 100-story drop in a gale, and swing them. Elias stared at the boy. Then he picked up his phone. Get the construction crews back. And get security. I don't care about the cost. I'll pay them triple. I'll pay them 10 times. I want every pane of glass on floors 40, 70, and 100 gone by sunset tomorrow. He looked at Sterling. You said it was impossible to fix the structure. So we aren't fixing the structure. We're changing the wind. This is insanity, Sterling whispered. If someone falls. If the building falls, Elias countered, thousands die. Now make the call. The war room transformed. It was no longer a debate club, it was a command center. Leo stood back, watching the machine of unlimited money grind into gear. You're going up there, aren't you? Sarah Voss asked, standing beside him. It's my math, Leo said. I need to make sure they hit the right panels. If they take out too many, the air pressure fails. If they take out too few, the rhythm kills us. It's dangerous, she said. The air up there, it's already howling. I've delivered pizzas in worse conditions. Leo smiled, a faint, tired smile. Leo, Sarah said, her voice serious. You're not a delivery driver anymore. You're the architect. Leo looked at his reflection in the dark window one last time. The delivery uniform was gone, replaced by a Reed Global shirt that was slightly too big for him. Let's hope the wind knows the difference, he said. The elevator doors closed, taking Leo up to the roof. But the war in the boardroom wasn't over. It was just shifting battlefields. The silence in the room was broken. Not by the wind, but by a notification sound that echoed like a gunshot. The chief financial officer looked at his phone and his face went gray, almost the color of wet ash. It is out, he whispered. What is out? Elias asked, pouring himself a drink with a hand that didn't shake. The press just tweeted. It reads, sources say Zenith Tower suffering critical structural failure. Evacuation imminent. Someone on the construction crew definitely talked. Elias took a sip. What's the reaction? It's catastrophic, the officer said, his voice rising in panic. The company stock is in freefall. We just lost 14% in 3 minutes. The trading computers are selling everything automatically. We are crashing. On the main screen, the structural data was replaced by a financial chart. It was a red line diving straight down like a heartbeat flatlining. The board is calling, the officer said, holding up the conference phone. All of them. Elias walked to the table and pressed the speaker button immediately. Elias, a voice boomed into the room. It was the chairman of the investment group, a man who had been trying to remove Elias for 5 years. We are seeing the reports. You are ordering unauthorized demolition on a dying building and we will be taking control. I am saving the building, Elias said calmly. You are destroying the facade and opening us up to lawsuits, the chairman shouted. We have the votes, Elias. We are firing you, effective immediately. Stop the work and evacuate the tower. Let the insurance handle the collapse. If you evacuate, you stop the work, Elias said. If you stop the work, the building falls. And if the building falls, the insurance won't pay because of negligence. You lose everything. We would rather lose the building than let you play God with sledgehammers, the chairman countered. We are freezing the company bank accounts, Elias. You can't pay the crew. No pay, no work. It is over. The room was silent. The officer looked at Elias. His eyes, a blend of fear and disbelief. They froze the accounts. The construction crew, they won't work on credit. Not in a storm like this. If the money doesn't hit their bank in 10 minutes, they walk. Elias looked at the clock. 1:42 a.m. Leo was upstairs, getting ready to hang off a ledge. But without the crew holding the ropes. Leo was just a kid on a suicide mission. How much cash do we need to keep the crew for 24 hours? Elias asked. 2 million, the officer said. Liquid. Immediately. Elias reached into his jacket, pulling out a black checkbook. Not the company one. His personal one. My private holdings, Elias said. My estate in the Hamptons. The jet. The art collection. Sell it all. The officer stared at him. Elias, that is your safety net. That is your legacy. If the building falls, you will be broke. You will be on the street. This building is my legacy, Elias said, his voice low and dangerous. He picked up the phone, dialing his private banker. It is Elias Thorne. I need to sell everything. Yes. I said everything. Mortgage the properties. Sell the portfolio. I need 2 million in the cruise account in 5 minutes. He listened for a moment, his face motionless. I don't care about the penalty fees. Just move the money. He hung up. Immediately, his face darted back to the officer. Tell the crew the money is personal. If they save this tower, I will double it. The officer shook his head and began typing the confirmation. You just bet your entire life on a 19-year-old kid. I really hope this turns out excellent. Elias turned back to the window, watching the rain slash against the glass. I didn't bet on the boy, Elias said. I bet on the math. The phone pinged, the transfer was complete. Up on the roof, the foreman's radio crackled. The crew stopped packing up and looked at their phones. Right there was the deposit notification, paid in full. They looked at Leo, standing in the rain with a sledgehammer. The foreman nodded and the work began. The first sledgehammer hit the glass at 2 a.m. It didn't shatter, it exploded. On the 70th floor, the air was already screaming. It tore through the opening, sending shards of glass flying into the night like glittering bullets. Leo stood about 20 feet back, strapped into a safety harness that felt too thin for the height. Next panel, move. The foreman shouted over the gale. Immediately, a team of 20 men, muscles straining against the wind, swung their hammers in rhythm. Down in the war room, the screens were flashing red and sensors were hysterically screaming. The atmosphere was hopeful, yet a wave of uncertainty was indistinguishable. Vibration levels are rising, Sterling warned, watching the data stream. You're weakening the skin with this, and the building keeps on twisting. This is going to fail. It has to get worse before it gets better, Elias countered, his eyes glued to the monitor. He wasn't sitting anymore. He was standing, his hands gripping the back of a leather chair so hard his knuckles were white. We are at critical mass, Sterling argued. If they take out the corner panels, the torsion will snap the frame. Tell them to stop. Elias turned around and picked up the radio. Leo, Sterling says the twisting is getting worse. What is going on up there? On the 70th floor, Leo couldn't hear the radio properly. He could only hear the air as it sounded like a freight train derailment happening inside his ears. He looked at the floor beneath his feet and he could feel it shifting, a sickening lurch to the left, then a slow drift back to the right. He grabbed the radio on his shoulder. We're not done. Leo said. The airflow isn't clean yet. We need to clear the north corner. That's suicide, Sterling yelled near the mic, the wind on the north corner is 60 miles an hour. If we don't clear it, Leo shouted back, the whole building comes down. I'm going to the corner. Leo, no, Dr. Sarah screamed. But Leo was already unclipped. He scrambled across the sleek concrete floor, fighting the invisible hand of the breeze that tried to push him off the edge. He grabbed a sledgehammer from a tired worker, and approached the north corner. The glass here was thick, heavy and expensive, and just behind it was the storm. As he raised the hammer preparing to hit, the building groaned. A deep, metallic moan that vibrated through his bones, causing him to rethink his decisions. It was undeniably, the sound of steel reaching its limit. He hit the glass with great might and the corner vanished. In shock mingled with satisfaction, he rushed as the wind roared through the gap. Not pushing the building anymore, but passing through it. By 4 a.m., the work was done. The mechanical floors were open wounds, gaping holes in the billion-dollar facade. Leo collapsed on a crate near the stairwell, gasping for air. His delivery uniform was torn, and his hands were bleeding from the glass. Soon enough, he wasn't alone. Elias Thorne stepped out of the stairwell and sat beside him. The billionaire wasn't wearing his jacket anymore, and his tie was gone. He now looked older, tired, human. You have a hell of a swing, boy, Elias said, handing Leo a bottle of water. I played baseball, Leo said between breaths. Before I couldn't afford the league fees. Elias looked out at the city lights flickering through the storm. My father was a bricklayer, Elias said softly, and he actually died broke. He said to me one day. Elias. Never build anything that you can't carry. Elias turned to look at the massive steel columns around them, his face flushed with exhaustion. I didn't listen. He said. I built things too big to carry. And now. I might drop this one. You won't drop it. Leo said. His face, an expression of confidence and warmth. How do you know? Asked Elias, once again surprised by the boy's confidence. Because you listened. Most guys in your position would have had security throw me out. They would have trusted the expensive engineers and the fancy AI. But you, sir, you listened to the delivery driver. Elias smiled, a real smile this time. You know why I listened? Leo shook his head. Because you were determined, Elias said. Sterling, Sarah, they are comfortable. They have tenure and they have reputations. But you looked at this building like you had nothing to lose. I remember that feeling. A very sharp sound came from the building, interrupting them. What's that sound? Elias asked. Leo's eyes lit up immediately as he sprouted to his feet. The eye of the storm is hitting, he said. This is it. They rushed back to the war room, almost stumbling at the door. Here, the atmosphere was heavy, suffocating and depressing. Everyone was tensed up, standing. The main screen showed the air's speed, 90 miles per hour. Gusts up to 110. This is the peak, Sarah Voss whispered. The ultimate test. On the table sat the coffee cup. Leo had left it there hours ago, still half filled with water. Everyone paid close attention to the cup, hoping for some change in the liquid's movement. Outside, the storm slammed into the zenith with the force of a nuclear shockwave. The glass rattled and the floor tilted under their feet. Structural stress at 98%, Sterling announced, his voice trembling. We are redlining. Hold, Elias whispered. With full attention. Leo watched the water in the cup. Hours ago, with just a finger tap, the water had splashed violently over the edge. That was resonance. Now, the building was shaking violently but the water wasn't rippling. The waves in the cup were simply broken, messy, and chaotic. Look. It's swaying, Sarah said. The rhythm is broken, Leo added, a smile breaking across his face. The storm can't find the frequency. It's pushing, but it can't grab hold. The building groaned one last time, a long, shuddering complaint, then settled. The sensors on the wall turned from flashing red to steady orange. Then slowly, to green. Airspeed is dropping, Sterling said, the disbelief obvious in his voice. Vibration levels are normalizing. The frame is holding. Dr. Sarah Voss slumped into her chair, putting her head in her hands. Subtle tears began streaking down her cheek. Elias Thorne didn't cry. He simply walked over to the window, looking out at the battered, broken, beautiful city. He turned to Leo and began speaking. You smashed 3 floors of my building, Leo, you caused about $50 million in damage to the facade. The room went silent. Send me the bill, Leo joked, his voice cracking with exhaustion. Elias laughed. A loud, booming laugh that broke the tension in the room forever. No, Elias said. I think I'll write it off as a consulting fee. He walked over to the whiteboard where Leo's frantic math was still scrawled in black marker. Don't erase that, Elias told the janitorial staff who were peeking in. Frame it. Elias walked back to Leo and placed a hand on his shoulder. Go home, kid. He began. Sleep, but be back here on Monday. I have classes on Monday, it won't be possible, Leo said. Not anymore, Elias replied. You just passed the final exam. The sun rose over the city at 6:14 a.m., hitting the zenith tower. The sleek, perfect glass skin was gone on 3 floors. The building looked scarred, like a boxer who had gone 12 rounds and was still standing. But in the morning light, those scars looked like medals. Leo walked into the lobby 2 days later. This time he wasn't wearing the delivery uniform. He was wearing a dark blazer with simple, clean fitting. The security guard, Davis, saw him coming and tilted his head in recognition. Davis didn't ask for ID this time, he just nodded. A sharp, respectful nod that said more than a salute. Mr. Thorne is waiting for you, Davis said, holding the elevator door open. Top floor. The ride up was quiet. Leo looked at the floor numbers ticking by. Last time, he was calculating wind speeds. This time, he was calculating his future. The war room was gone. The mess was cleaned up and the tables were polished Brazilian rosewood again. It was quiet, just like the silence of power. Elias Thorne was standing by the window, looking out at the city he owned. The building authority signed off an hour ago, Elias said without turning. They called the missing windows an innovative aerodynamic feature. We passed all inspections. Leo leaned by the table. You'll need to redesign the facade permanently. I sketched some ideas for. I don't care about the facade, Elias interrupted, turning around. He tossed a thick folder onto the table which slid across the wood and stopped in front of Leo. What is this? Leo asked. An employment contract? Elias smiled, shaking his head. No. I don't hire geniuses, Leo. I invest in them. Leo quickly opened the folder. It wasn't a job offer. It was an incorporation document. It read. Project Arrow. Founding partner, Leo Williams. Seed investor, Reed Global. What is this, sir? Leo asked, clearly bewildered by the document he held. That is a check for $5 million. Elias said casually, as if discussing the weather. It's seed money, Leo. You aren't going to work for me, you're going to build your own firm. And really, I'll be delighted to be your first client. He stared at the check. The numbers didn't look real. Why? Leo asked. Because you were right, Leo, Elias said, walking closer. We spent billions on AI. We spent years on data. But when the storm came, the computer didn't save us. The human did. Elias pointed to his own head. Intuition, gut feeling, the ability to see a coffee cup and understand a skyscraper. You can't code that. That is the only thing worth investing in. But I haven't even graduated yet. Leo said, his mind still trying to comprehend the amount that rested on his palms. Then hurry up, Elias grinned. We have a lot of work to do. Leo walked out of the zenith, stepping onto the sidewalk where the glass had shattered just 3 days ago. A lady prompting an AI model for some relationship advice bumped into him, apologizing quickly as she hurriedly walked away. The city was moving fast and everyone kept looking at their phones. And he simply wondered, just how many people still blindly trusted algorithms in today's world. Before mounting his rackety bike, he took a final look at the building he had saved. He shook his head and rode away, moved by a deep satisfaction in the sheer value of human competence.